Virtually every leader in the health freedom movement talks about the insecurity of the food supply as one of the primary avenues of tyranny. Our family has rigorously sourced our foods for over a decade, and one of our favorite sources is Farm Match. And specifically, if you are in San Diego, Real Food Club PMA. My kids are literally made from their maple breakfast sausage and the amazing carnitas we make from their pasture-raised pork. But from regeneratively raised raw dairy products to the organic potato chips made in regenerative lard, or anything you might get at your local farmer's market, our family's overall wellness and the security of our food lies in the hands of Farm Match and Real Food Club. I am so excited to be sharing about Farm Match and Real Food Club to offer Future Generations podcast listeners 10% off your first order. You can find the code and link in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of the show. Love and appreciate you all. The desire to go off-grid and disconnect from the system was one of the single most important initiatives any household could have. Whether it is growing our own food, becoming sovereign in our energy production and usage, establishing alternative communication strategies, or digging a well and finding the infinity of primary water. About a year and a half ago, our family moved into our new home in North County, San Diego on 3 acres of precious land here in America's finest county. One of the first things we did was hire Food Forest Abundance to design a regenerative layout for our land. From the different trees to plant differing berry guilds and synergistic pollinators, to consulting on alternative energy, collecting our rainwater, and even helping us find our local well guy, Food Forest Abundance and their Freedom Farm Academy has been pivotal in the gradual and consistent evolution of our household towards true sovereignty from the system. They have helped us simplify a very confusing process and helped us create the design of our dreams. It doesn't matter if you have 3 acres, dozens or hundreds, or just a small yard. Food Forest Abundance has something to offer you and your family in your journey to move your entire household off-grid. Use the code TheFutureGen to work with the absolute best in the world, Food Forest Abundance, to create your own freedom farm and get off-grid at a discounted rate. Welcome to another episode of the Future Generations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom, and this episode is one of the single most important that I have had the pleasure to record. I am going to have to listen to this one again myself. I highly encourage you to move over to YouTube and watch this video or Rumble because Brandon Joe Williams, one of the emerging voices in the entire freedom sovereignty movement, is one of the greatest wealths of information that I've ever actually gotten to interview. And so he actually asked to share his screen, and he basically did that the entire episode and showed me every source that he was citing. And we started the conversation talking about money, talking about the fact that money itself is not just fake, but one of the biggest hoaxes in the world. But we also recognize that was, like, if you use the baseball analogy, that's like rounding third base, right? When it comes to what he spent the most of the time talking about was nationality, citizenship, and taxation, is taking that first swing, is recognizing so many key fundamental aspects of the infrastructure of enslavement that has literally been there long, as essentially since the inception of this country, which most people don't know, is maybe a hard hill to climb, right? And a hard pill to swallow. But fun fact, look up what BAR stands for. Right? When a lawyer passed the bar exam, what does that stand for? It stands for the British Accredited Register, right? If you don't know that bar does not stand for anything having to do with America, it's insane. And so who actually knows what jurisdiction we are all under, Like, we are actually under the jurisdiction of the UK, which is not, when you understand a lot of this field, it starts to make sense. It starts to make a lot of sense. And so I encourage you to listen closely. I encourage you to watch the video. I encourage you to look up all of Brandon's information. I was referred to him by two of my favorite podcasters, Luke Story and Alex Zek, and he was actually referred to us. And I asked him a really important question at the end, because there's a lot of you who are still growing your family. There's a lot of you who have questions around citizenship, around birth certificates, around social security numbers for your kids. And there's a lot of competing factors. And I'm not here to tell you that Brandon has the only way to go or the way to go. I'm here to give you an opportunity to understand that there is so much more information out there than we could ever imagine. And I did not do the thing that he actually recommended. And I'm very interested. I'm very interested to look at what that truth is. He talked about being able to write and create in minutes an infinite amount of, quote, money. And it's just very interesting. And I am definitely going to be diving deeper into his website and understanding a lot of the different resources that he provides, all of which are absolutely free until you work at him at the highest level, which many of you largely would never, ever have to. The point of the matter is in the freedom movement, so many people have popped up as experts, and so many people have popped up to essentially profit on many of us who are just interested in learning more. And Brandon's one of those guys that is flipping the script, and his explanation as to why is actually one of the most congruent that I've ever heard. And I encourage you to listen. I think you're going to learn a lot. If this is a field that you are interested in, that you're looking for more information on, I highly enjoyed this interview. I highly recommend studying it deeper, and I can't wait to hear how you receive it and what you do with it. Genuinely love and appreciate you all. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Future Generations podcast, providing you with the world-changing content necessary to inspire you, your family, and our planet to a life of optimal health potential. We'll help you make the choices that powerfully influence the lives you bring into this world. It's time to strengthen our resolve, do better now, and for our future generations. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Future Generations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom. I have with me one of the most, I would say, requested guests from our social media platform, somebody who has become a very powerful emerging voice in this movement for freedom. Brandon Joe Williams, you were referred to me. I think somebody actually from your team reached out, but I think on my end, people were actually referring you to me, Alex Zek and Luke Story.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You.
Those are good guys.
And I honestly, I consider myself a novice. I've been really studying this over the last year and a half, 2 years or so. And I have been devouring some of your content, and I really appreciate what you've been sharing as far as like, quote, citizenship, taxation, all those different expertise aspects. And man, I just wanted to welcome you to the show. I'd love our audience to get to know you both personally and professionally.
Love it. Thank you.
So please, introduce yourself, man.
I am a what's called attorney in fact, which is basically just a contract-based attorney. I can't represent people in court or in any legal capacity, meaning I can't stand as though I am them or impersonate them directly, but I assist other people to present on behalf of themselves. And I am also a major researcher in this area, and I just basically do tons and tons of research, and I put everything together, and then I release that research for free.
That's a very different strategy than a lot of people do, man. I think it's really interesting because we've seen over the last 4 years this kind of awakening for freedom, and then all of a sudden you start to see this information actually be tagged with like a very big price, and a big financial investment for a lot of people. Why do you take that approach? I think it's awesome.
Because I have do you know who Dan S. Pena is?
I have not met him personally, but I've heard of him. Yeah.
He's my favorite. So his business model is everything's free all the way from the bottom all the way to the very, very tippy top, and then the very, very tippy top is wildly difficult to get into and extremely expensive, and that's basically the same business model that I've taken on for many reasons, for
Right.
legal reasons, for stress reasons. I have no stress. I can say literally anything I want. I can tell people to go fuck themselves. I could post a dick pic on the internet and it would do nothing more than just help my cause. So it's my favorite business model because it's a business model that you control, not a business model that controls you. And that's why I love it so much.
It's that congruency that is really interesting because you start to see a lot of these, whoever you want to call them, these different experts, these different lawyers, these different, freedom, avenues. And along the way, there's different like financial time, money, energy, focus investments that largely are somewhat contradictory to the whole premise behind freedom and sovereignty and those types of things. It's really interesting because I started to kind of pay very close attention to, and then all of a sudden, people that are telling you to not absolve your, responsibility and your own personal sovereignty, but they're also then shackling you to their system, which is so crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then plus, as you go deeper and deeper into the whole money negotiable instrument rabbit hole,
Right.
once you really learn how what's called negotiable instruments, so everything in your wallet is actually what's called a negotiable instrument. It's not money at all. Money is defined as gold and silver coins. Money is defined as gold and silver coins in Black's Law Dictionary as well as in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. And negotiable instruments are defined as unconditional promises or orders to pay. And you can find that information in UCC Article 3, Section 104. So when you understand Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than an unconditional promise to pay between two parties, one is called United States, which if we were to look that up, I can do a little screen share. If we go to UCC 3-104, well, actually 102 is even more fascinating. UCC 3-102. If you look at, it tells you right here, this article applies to negotiable instruments. It does not apply to money, right?
Yep.
And then if you go to UCC 3-104, what is the definition of a negotiable instrument? It means an unconditional promise or order to pay a fixed amount of money. And then there's more information here, but this is what a Federal Reserve note is. It's a negotiable instrument, right? And if you look on your Federal Reserve notes, I actually have some right here. If you look on your Federal Reserve notes, you'll see there's two parties. There's two entities or two persons, depending on the terminology you want to use. One person is called United States or United States of America, and the other one is called Federal Reserve. We all know that. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure that out, right? I got one right here. So what's fascinating is if you go to UCC 9-307, subsection H, this is so you have a debtor and you have a creditor when it comes to a Federal Reserve note, because it's a unconditional promise to pay, a Federal Reserve note, right? So the creditor is obviously the Federal Reserve, and the debtor is this person called United States. Now, what's amazing is if you go down to subsection H, it tells you where this person called the United States is located. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. So what a Federal Reserve note is it's a negotiable instrument. It's an unconditional promise to pay between Federal Reserve and United States.
Wow.
I don't know where Federal Reserve is located, but United States is located in the District of Columbia. And that's the functionality of what people believe is money. And when you really understand how negotiable instruments work, you can actually manufacture an infinite amount of them whenever you want, and no one can deny you sending them your manufactured currency.
Public or private?
I can cook up $14 trillion right now this afternoon, and send it in, and there's absolutely nothing that anyone can do to stop that from coming in, and they have to perform on that payment.
That's so insane.
So that's why I don't charge. Why do I need someone else to give me Federal Reserve notes?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't need that. That's not part of my life, right?
Yep.
So that's why I don't charge to give away my research. There's no point. I don't need your Federal Reserve notes. I have no use for your Federal Reserve notes because I know how to perform on negotiable instruments.
Wow.
So that's the short answer to your question without getting into all of that and how it works. If anyone would like to know more information about that, I have a 10-minute, and I'm not even kidding, literally 10-minute breakdown on how to have infinite money. And it's on my YouTube. It's also one of my pinned videos on my Instagram, and it's my pinned video on Facebook, and it's also on my TikTok, and I think it might be the pinned video on my X as well. It's called How to Have Infinite Money.
That's awesome.
In 10 minutes.
We'll make sure and share that, because I think in the end, I think that therein lies, in my line of work, I'm a oddly a prenatal and pediatric chiropractor. Why would we be talking? And it's really interesting because we operate almost fully outside of the conventional healthcare system, which, in my opinion, is a different form of enslavement. And in the end, there are a lot of chiropractors that might do different therapies, and they might do, like, there's some states that are lobbying to prescribe drugs, and when there's that level of incongruency in the way that people operate, it's really interesting. And I've never actually heard of somebody defining why they don't actually accept, quote, payment, right, or Federal Reserve notes, because that would actually be incongruent if you actually know that the facade of money is,
well, it's really, right? Really simple. If you do want to get into it a little bit, I can explain it. Because if you have UCC 3 what is it? 603, right? So the way it works is any unconditional promise or order to pay is a negotiable instrument. And if you do what's called an endorsement, which an endorsement is a signature or series of words that clarify the redeemability, exchangeability, or transferability of a negotiable instrument. If you look at UCC 3-603, if tender of payment, and by the way, payment, the definition of payment is to perform on a duty, obligation, or contract. Okay, it's not to send someone Federal Reserve notes. That is the dumbest, most pathetic, most stupid fucking thing. Wow. People's definition of the word payment is so fucking wrong. It's not even funny. It's like saying, like, what's the definition of red, the color? And someone's like, oh, it's a hubcap from a 1964 Lincoln Town car. Like, no, you fucking idiot. That has nothing. That's like, no, payment has nothing to do with Federal Reserve note. Payment means to perform on a duty, obligation, or contract. Okay. So if I just remove that word, because people get so fucking caught up on that word because they're so fucking wrong on the definition. If tender of you attempting to perform on a duty, obligation, or contract, basically, if you send in a negotiable instrument and it's made to the person who originally told you to pay on the instrument, and the tender, meaning the unconditional offer of that instrument, is refused, there is discharge to the amount of the tender. So if you send in a bill of exchange or a promissory note for $600 and the tender is refused, then $600 comes off your bill, even though they've refused the payment. Wow. Doesn't make a difference. They cannot. Wow. They cannot refuse the payment as long as there's an endorsement on it, and as long as it is an unconditional order or promise. They cannot refuse you attempting to perform on a duty, obligation, or contract. It is a physical and legal impossibility. Cannot be done. Wow. And if you look at now, the only way they can dishonor an instrument comes from UCC 3-502. So if they are going to dishonor the instrument, they can only dishonor it under these specific circumstances. And when you start to read the various circumstances, it's actually pretty crazy. So dishonor of a note, a promissory note, can only be done in 3 ways. if the note is not paid on the day of presentment, if the note is not payable on demand and is payable through a bank or the terms, blah 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 blah. So you start getting into this, and really the only way that they can dishonor the note is by saying that it wasn't paid by the time it's supposed to be paid, right?
Wow.
But I've already figured out a way around that. So if you look at UCC 3-114, it says here that if an instrument contains contradictory terms, typewritten terms prevail over printed terms, and handwritten terms prevail over both. So all I do is just cross out with a pen the due date,
Wow.
and I just write on the instrument with a pen, payable on demand.
Wow.
That makes the instrument undishonorable. You literally physically cannot dishonor the instrument. So what does that mean? There's no legal way for them to say no to my tender. It is a physical and legal impossibility.
Wow.
If you don't take it, I literally just sue you. There's nothing to talk about.
I think we're crossing like third base when when we're at bat, right? And I will tell you, I have like 17 questions on this, and I think we've already kind of gone way over everyone's head. But
it's all good. Let's back up. I'll do my normal. This is why I usually don't get into this one.
No, I appreciate it though, because this is really important, right? Like we're sharing, like I've been sharing a lot of this on my platforms. I've been talking a lot of this in my practice with some of our patients that are very awake to a lot of this. But in the end, it's really important for people to recognize that they're at bat, that there's a set of bases, and that you just gave us like third base, right? And they don't even know they're at bat yet, right? And I think this is important because I think you are going to lay a very powerful, you've already laid a powerful frame for people to recognize things like concepts like infinite money, concepts of even the false nature of money / tender / payment, all those different aspects of things. And I think it all comes down to what you're going to talk about today in terms of citizen nationality, taxation, and that type of thing. I would love for you to just kind of go for it.
Usually the second time I come on a show, I wait a couple months. And then the second time I come on a show, we can go through the financial stuff, and it usually lands really well on the second show. Right. So this is going to be nationality versus citizenship. Okay. And just in case, sometimes I show this later in the show, but I'll go ahead and just show this at the beginning, and we'll just test it out. So if you look at Title 8 of the United States Code, Section 1401, just to prove right out the gate that nationality and citizenship are two completely different things. I usually do this in the middle of the conversation, but I'm going to go ahead and do this for all the skeptics out there, just to blow that out of the water right out the gate at the beginning. So the way that you read this stuff is really pretty simple. The first number is the title. So if you look at the United States Code, it runs by titles, right? Title, and then each number represents something. Title 24 is hospitals and asylums, and then you have Title 25 is Indians, and Internal Revenue Code, your tax codes, Title 26. Okay, so 8, if we go back to the list here, we have 8 is aliens and nationality, right? Ironically enough, has nothing to do with citizenship so far. Even if you go into it and you look at all the main chapter titles, you won't see the word citizen or citizenship anywhere.
Wow. Interesting.
The main subjects are aliens and nationality, which is also very fascinating, right? So just to blow the naysayers up real nice right at the beginning, 8 USC 1401 says the following shall be nationals and citizens of the United States at birth. 8 USC 1408 says the following shall be nationals but not citizens of the United States at birth. So this is the fastest and easiest way for me to prove that nationality and citizenship are two entirely separate subjects, right? So now starting back at the beginning of my typical presentation, we have Title 28 of the United States Code, Section 3002. We're going to go down to subsection 15. United States means, and then what do we have here on definition A is the one that we typically talk about, a federal corporation, okay? Now, we've already covered UCC 9-307, which is talking about the unconditional promise to pay called a Federal Reserve note. Uh, the location of that federal corporation is the United States is located in the District of Columbia. Now, the next logical question is where in the District of Columbia? I have no idea. I've never seen an answer to that question. I'm still looking to this day. I'm not sure if there is an answer.
Wow.
So with that said, we're going to go to 42 USC 9102, and we're going to go down to the definition of a U.S. citizen, right? Oh, actually, you know what? No. We're going to go to 26 USC 7701. So there's two definitions in all of law. In my opinion, they're the most important definitions ever. These two words, just these two words alone will completely change your life and the life of everyone that you care about dramatically, like more than almost anything in your whole life you've ever experienced, literally, like massive shift, paradigm shift. The first of those two words is the word person. Okay. Now you're going to see a different definition all over the place, but this one from the tax code, Title 26, is it gives enough detail, but it's not some huge, long, convoluted thing. There's also some other definitions we're going to be looking at where it's very vague and it doesn't give a lot of information. I like this one is my favorite because it's kind of right in the middle, right? The term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation.
It's crazy.
So a person can be any of those things. And most people, which is the plural of what we see in the Constitution. In the Constitution, you see we the people. You will never see the word people anywhere. You will see the word persons. So when you're talking about these statutory laws and this kind of crap, including legal fictions, the plural is persons. So the idea that an individual, people think like, oh, I'm an individual. Well, yeah, but whenever they refer to an individual in the plural, they use the word persons. You aren't a persons, you are a people. So there's a lot of confusion if an individual, the definition of the word individual is very vague. You don't often see it being defined. So people think, oh, an individual, that's me. I don't know about that. To this day, I still don't know if that's referring to you or not. I really couldn't tell you. It's something that would need to go through a long legal battle to figure out if the word individual includes living men and women, because I don't think it does personally.
Right.
But anyways, moving forward. So, and also if you want to see some real creepy shit, start reading like, I've even seen it on pool. Like when you look at the pool and there's rules, they don't use the word people, they use the word persons. And if you also look inside of any elevator, you'll see, maximum weight 2,500 or 25 persons. You'll start to see that word persons around. It's very creepy because they're not referring to people. They're referring to a totally different term called persons. That definition is the plural version of shall be construed to mean and include an individual, trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. Okay.
Wow.
Now, we're going to go back to 42 USC 9102 subsection 18. We're going to look at the definition of a United States citizen, right? Now, because we've already looked up the definition of the word person, subsection C is quite shocking. We're going to look at that one first. Okay. Any corporation, partnership, association, or other entity organized or existing under the laws of the United States. Because a corporation, partnership, association, or other entity is a person, that person can be a United States citizen. So if you have an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLC or a sole proprietorship or an association or a professional corporation or anything else, if that corporation or association, I don't even have those things. I use trusts or what's called organizations, Title 8 organizations, which we'll get into later. But if you have any of those things and any of those things are organized or existing under the laws of the United States, your business is a United States citizen.
It's wild.
Legally.
Wild.
But now we're going to get into subsection A. Right. This is the one that people usually think with whenever they think of a United States citizen. Any individual which I still to this day, I'm still trying to figure out if the word individual includes living men and women. I really don't know. So even that word is up for debate. but let's just assume that it does, or let's assume that it could, or let's assume that there's an all caps name that is a completely different person than you that sort of represents you in law. That is what I think the actual definition of the word individual is. But anyways, any individual who is a citizen of the United States by law, birth, or naturalization, right? Law means existing under the laws of or contracted into, just like what you see in subsection C. Yep. Birth is a complicated subject that I'm not going to get into, and I'm not even really so sure that it even applies to this at all. Truthfully, I think you can basically pretty much remove these two, law and birth. I think really just naturalization is really the only way that you can actually become a citizen of the United States. And this is the part where we're going to get into what is the definition of the term naturalization. And when I told you before, there's two words that will completely change your life forever, one of them being person. The second word is the word naturalization. And I actually think the word naturalization is even more important than the word person. Mm-hmm. The definition of the term naturalization comes from 8 USC 1101 subsection 823. The term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. And this is the part in the show, especially when I'm doing in-person presentations, where I always fuck with the audience, and I'm like, and then one person's like, well, what if you make a phone call, and another guy's like, well, what if I wrote like a letter and I put it under a tree, and and it was blah, blah, and I always do this thing where I go, well, shockingly, that would be included under by any means whatsoever. Wow. It's kind of a fun little conversation that we have. People can't believe that this sentence means exactly what it means.
So essentially, anyone can confer nationality, is what you're saying?
Anyone. Now it gets crazier. We're gonna go deep dive into this definition.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Because it means anyone can confer nationality on anyone or anything at any point in time by doing literally anything. That's what this is saying, right? But we're going to clear up every single word in this definition in order for me to prove that point. Okay. That's why I said this is probably the most important definition literally ever. It's the most important definition to literally like any word you'll ever learn, like in your entire existence, basically.
Got it.
At this point in my research. Okay. Yep. I didn't know about this a couple of years ago when I did the free course. So I'm working on the free course 2.0 version right now. This is going to be obviously like the spinal cord of the entire course is going to be this naturalization term, right?
I love it.
So conferring, that's just the normal definition, bestowing an honor or title upon, or saying as though someone has something. It's the very simple thing, right? Nationality, the state of being in or being involved with or pledging allegiance to a nation, right? The word state. Okay, this is an interesting word. We have to do some research to figure that out. People think typically that the word state means one of the 50 states in
California.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, right. That's not right at all. That's not even close to the definition of the word state. So we're going to go to my Nation of the Amnesty Coalition page. We're going to go to Covenant of an Ambassador, and I have all the definitions here. So this is the basic run-of-the-mill legal definition of the word state. In its largest sense, a state is a body politic or society of men, which doesn't tell us very much, right? Obviously, so I had to go deeper. What is a society? What is a body politic? It's a state or nation or public association. Still doesn't tell me much. Let's keep going. Society, an association or company of persons. Interesting. Persons. Generally unincorporated, which is even more goofy because persons are typically incorporated. So if you were to say unincorporated persons, you would just say people.
Right.
There's so much confusion when it comes to the word person. That's where a primary amount of confusion in all law comes from, is the word person. Okay. United together by mutual consent in order to deliberate, determine, and act jointly for some common purpose. In a wider sense, the community or public, the people in general. See, now they use the word people, which makes it even more confusing, right?
Right.
People and persons are two entirely different terms, completely different terms. I mean, they couldn't be different.
Can you qualify the definition of people?
People would only include men and women.
There you go.
That wouldn't include legal fictions, corporations, trusts, associations, partnerships. And we'll go into some more crazy ones too, and during this presentation, right? So this is where this whole subject exploded and the door blew wide open with the C2 charge. Okay, so this is the definition of the word nation that I found from a court case, and you can use this definition for any word: state, body politic, society, nation. All of them are fully encompassed in this definition. This is the definition that is going to blow open the idea of nationality for you, or naturalization for you, in a big way, right? Nation. It's an independent body politic, a society of men united together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by the joint efforts of their combined strength. But every combination of men who govern themselves independently of all others will not be considered a nation. A body of pirates, for example, who govern themselves are not a nation. To constitute a nation, another ingredient is required. The body thus formed must respect other nations in general and each of their members in particular. Such a society has her affairs and her interests. She deliberates and takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person who possesses an understanding and will peculiar to herself and is susceptible of obligations and rights. So if we break this down, this is where the definition of the word person comes from. See? Takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person, right? So it's the same idea as how human cells, trillions or quadrillions or whatever it is, come together and they produce this human body that operates as a single person. There's billions or trillions of little living things that all come together to operate as one big, huge living thing, right?
Got it.
And then as far as I'm concerned, in terms of my own personal spiritual ideas, we're like the spirit that basically drives this thing around, so it's like a car, basically. That's kind of how I look at it, right? So it's the same idea for the word nation, right? A nation is a bunch of people operating together with good internal and external tranquility, and they respect other nations in general and each of their members in particular. So like, for example, the example they're giving here, a body of pirates would not be able to legally consider themselves a nation, because what they're doing is they're raping and pillaging, and they're not respecting other nations in general and each of their members in particular, right? So what they're saying is that a nation can be a nation legally as long as it respects other nations in general and each of their members in particular. And it's saying that once a group of individuals, people are doing that, such a society has her affairs and her interests. She deliberates and takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person who possesses an understanding and will peculiar to herself. They're giving the nation itself a genderization of herself, which is kind of interesting and confusing. And is susceptible of obligations and rights, right? So what they're saying here is the beauty of this definition is the word state, the word nation, the word society, and the word body politic have nothing to do with a physical location or territory.
Wow.
That's the key here. That's the big, huge monster key that opens up the door to everything, right? So it's not saying state like one of the 50 states. It's saying any group of individuals operating together with good internal and external tranquility, regardless of location or territory. It's got nothing to do with it. Totally irrelevant. If I was in court and someone said, oh, well, territory or location or coordinates, I'd stand up and I'd say objection. Irrelevant. Has nothing to do with the conversation at all whatsoever. Okay. And I'm going to prove an additional aspect of this. It's going to kind of blow your mind. It's a breakthrough in the research that happened just a couple of days ago. So the term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a nation upon a person. It doesn't say upon yourself. It doesn't say upon a trust of which you are a trustee of. It doesn't say upon a corporation of which you are a sitting member of the board. It doesn't say upon a corporation of which you have more than 15% ownership of.
Right.
It's literally on anyone or anything. The definition of the word person is always a scary one. You always, whenever you see that word, you got to dive at it full force, like you're jumping through a glass window, because you never know what you're getting into. So this is Title 8. It's going to have a different definition of the word person.
Interesting.
It's a more vague definition. The term person means an individual or an organization. Again, we don't really know what individual means. To this day, I still don't know. They don't really define it much anywhere. I personally believe it's the all caps name that you see on all your bills and everything, and they open up some kind of an estate or trust or partnership of your name in all capital letters a couple weeks after you're born. And I think that particular organization that they opened is the definition of the word individual.
Totally.
But I just don't.
Yep.
I still, to this day, I'm still working on trying to figure out what that word means. Okay. The word organization is actually right here in 8 USC 1101 in subsection A28. And it's also extremely fascinating. So we'll scroll down and I'll show you that real quick. This is the most mind-blowing thing ever. And this is actually where a lot of the research has exploded in the past week or so, right? The term organization means, but is not limited to, an organization, corporation, company, partnership, association, trust, foundation, or fund, and includes a group of persons, whether or not incorporated, permanently or temporarily associated together with joint action on any subject or subjects.
Wow.
So when you say to yourself, people always ask me, oh, Brandon, should I open up a trust? Should I open up a corporation? As of a few days ago, that's completely changed, because the thing is that a trust has to be written up and there has to be some sort of what's called res or asset of the trust that has to be entered into the trust. And there has to be a trustee and a beneficiary and all this stuff. I call this a Title 8 organization. This is the most mind-blowing thing ever, because look, this definition is not even limited to the following points.
Right.
And it includes whether or not they are even incorporated. It includes if they're permanent or temporarily associated with joint action on any subject or subjects. So technically speaking, you and I right now on this show, we are an organization, a Title 8 organization. And you say to yourself, okay, you don't need to write up anything. Now check it out. If we go back to the tax code, and we look up the word person, do you see the word organization anywhere in this definition?
No.
So as per the tax code, a Title 8 organization would not even be a person. So it means the tax code literally, physically, legally could not apply to a Title 8 organization.
Interesting.
And a Title 8 organization is literally just, you and I just say we have an organization. You and I just say that we're going to go and get an EIN number so we can open up a bank account. We go on to Form SS4. We make up the name of the organization, which is going to be Brandon and Stanton organization. And then when you go down to type of organization, they don't have it listed, obviously, because they either don't know or they don't want you knowing about it. Title 8 organization. And we're going to get an EIN number for this organization. And we're going to send this in. And I teach how to fill this out on a show I did a couple days ago, and it'll be part of the course 2.0. But we can get an EIN number. We're going to go here to what do we do? What are we filling this out for? We're going to go for banking purposes, and we're going to go to open a bank account. And we're going to fill out all this information in a certain way. And we're going to get an EIN number. And then you and I can go to the bank, and you and I can open up a bank account for our completely non-taxable, Title 26 is not a person. It wouldn't be a person in the tax code.
Wow.
So they say the person called Brandon. Oh, hold on a second there, Bucko, Mr. Buck Rogers. You're putting the cart before the horse real hard. Brandon and Stanton organization would not fit the definition of person from 26 USC 7701 subsection A1. Right. And it's the
Wow.
easiest thing on the planet. You don't need any paperwork. You don't need a notary. You don't need jack shit. In fact, you and I have a Title VIII organization right now. Even if we don't even say it, we still have it. It's there anyways. It doesn't make a difference whether we say it or not.
Whether you have an EIN or not?
Nope. Doesn't make a difference. The EIN is just to open a bank account.
Wow.
So with the EIN, now we can open a bank account. And then now that we have a bank account, now we can attach credit card processing to it. Now we can process credit cards, make checks, receive checks under this Title VIII organization called Brandon and Stanton Organization.
Wow.
No paperwork required. Right?
Negotiable instruments.
No, we would be able to accept and process, redeem, and transfer negotiable instruments with a bank account. Yes.
Gotcha.
So the definition of person from Title VIII is an individual or an organization, which we just covered what that is, right? So a Title VIII organization is pretty cool, right? So going back to this, let's reread this now, and we're going to replace the word state with the word nation, and we're going to replace the word person with the definition. The term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a nation upon an individual or an organization after birth by any means whatsoever. So what does this mean? Anyone can confer the nationality of anything or anywhere upon literally anyone or anything at any point in time by literally any way possible they can dream up in their entire world for the next. If they dreamed up different scenarios of, well, what if I did this? And what if I did that for 17 hours nonstop at a machine gun rate of speed? The answer would be yes to all of them. You can move me around. I can move you around. I can move Starbucks into heaven, literally. I can say I confer the nationality of heaven upon Starbucks after birth by any means whatsoever and sue Starbucks. And now they have to negate against the fact that I've tried to naturalize them into heaven.
Wow.
Now, moving on, the term national comes from 8 USC 1101 subsection A21. The term national, which is the big hot term right now, state national, American national, all these different terms, all these things, all this stuff, right? Now, the first and foremost thing that we have to realize when we look at the word national is it's not capitalized. It's never capitalized. It's not capitalized here. It's not capitalized here. It's not capitalized. It's not a capital word. It's not a proper noun. Okay. The term national means a person, same definition, because we're still in Title VIII, owing permanent allegiance to a state. So if we reread this and remove these same words, the term national means an individual or an organization owing permanent allegiance to a nation. Very simple, right? Now you say to yourself, permanent. Now, beautiful. Look at that. It's clickable. Let's click that. The term permanent means a relationship of continuing or lasting nature as distinguished from temporary, but a relationship may be permanent even though it is one that may be dissolved eventually at the instance either of the United States or of the individual in accordance with law. It's a joke. It's an oxymoron. The term permanent means nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
It's crazy.
So it's just, I don't even know why it's there, just to throw people off. I don't know what it's there for. We just remove that word completely. It has no meaning to be there, right? So if we remove that word and replace this one and this one, let's reread it. The term national means an individual or an organization owing allegiance to a nation. So simple. So the question I always ask is, do you need to live inside of a nation to pledge allegiance to that nation? Would you say yes or no?
I would say no.
Precisely. That is correct. So where you live and where you domicile and where you're located has absolutely nothing to do with your nationality at all whatsoever. It is so fucking irrelevant. It's like saying, what kind of apple do you enjoy in relation to your nationality? Who gives a fuck? Has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation. There's only one thing that has anything to do with the conversation at all, and it's this word right here.
Allegiance.
Allegiance. Allegiance determines nationality. We've already covered nationality and citizenship are two entirely different things. We are not talking about citizenship right now. We are talking about nationality. Nationality is allegiance. It's that simple. You could say nationality is defined as that of which you have allegiance to, period. End of story. It's that simple. So fucking simple, right? So now we start getting into this term that everyone's talking about. National of the United States, non-citizen national of the United States, U.S. national, blah, blah, blah. There's still a lot of confusion. It's very simple. A national is an individual or an organization owing allegiance to a nation. If you decide you would like to owe allegiance to the nation called United States, which is located in the District of Columbia, you become a national of the United States. If you've pledged allegiance to North Korea, you would be a national of North Korea. If you pledged allegiance to California, which is a nation, by the way, you'd be a national of California. If you pledged allegiance to a micronation, such as Slowjamistan out here by the Salton Sea, you would be a national of the Republic of Slowjamistan. If you've pledged allegiance to Canada, you would be a national of Canada. Do you see? It's very simple. It's so simple, it's painful, right?
How do they define allegiance? Or do they?
There is no special definition, so they just
Gotcha.
use the normal definition, which we can look at here in if we go to my passport explanatory statement, I have the definition of that here. By allegiance is meant the obligation of fidelity and obedience which the individual owes to the government under which he lives or to his sovereign in return for the protection he receives. Now, this is the most important part. It may be an absolute and permanent obligation, or it may be a qualified and temporary one.
Wow.
So what we do is I wrote a qualified and temporary pledge of allegiance.
Gotcha.
And this is, and most people are pretty happy with it. My qualified and temporary pledge of allegiance is, to be clear, I am not an enemy of the incorporated entity that called itself United States. But since I do not live in that area, nor do I have much in the way of contractual obligations with that area, my allegiance lies simply in the ideas that are found within the incorporated body that would match up with the definitions of nation and peace in the definition section in section 2. So, real quick, in order to understand that, we have to go to the definition of a foreign government in the United States Code. This is also very shocking. A foreign government is literally in the United States Code defined as the following: includes any government, faction, or body of insurgents within a country with which the United States is at peace. And here's the most important part that pisses off the media like crazy: irrespective of recognition by the United States.
Wow.
So your Title VIII organization, as long as that Title VIII organization is at peace, you can legally classify it as a foreign government.
Wow.
As long as that foreign government has not been naturalized into United States by you conferring the nationality of the state called the United States upon it after birth by any means whatsoever. So my Title VIII organization is born inside of my own nation called the Nation of the Amnesty Coalition, and I don't naturalize it anywhere. It's born there and it stays there. So so the way that I operate in the United States is I operate as a foreign nation, and you know, my apartment is an embassy, essentially, right, of a foreign nation, of a foreign government, right?
Gotcha.
Now the thing is that this is the key word of what allows you to have a foreign government, the word peace. So the most important thing is, okay, what is the definition of the word peace legally, right? And the word definition of the word peace dovetails into the definition of the word nation beautifully. The tranquility enjoyed by a political society, internally by the good order which reigns among its members, and externally by the good understanding it has with all other nations. Applied to the internal regulations of a nation, peace imports, that word there means like shows or indicates, Peace imports, in a technical sense, not merely a state of repose and security as opposed to one of violence or warfare, but likewise a state of public order and decorum.
Wow.
So what is peace? It's tranquility enjoyed internally and externally. And it's saying that it's not just not being at war, but it's actually operating in a manner that shows and shares excellent public order and decorum. And this is where we start getting into diplomatic activities, diplomatic community, which is I teach a lot of that too. There are literally books on diplomatic relations, exactly how to do handshakes depending on the person's status, exactly how to introduce one individual to another individual. They have graphs that lay out where everyone's supposed to sit at a table, exactly where the forks, knives, spoons, glasses are supposed to go. This is all part of the what I call the technology of decorum. When you start getting into diplomatic relations, it's a whole massive body of decorum, which is essentially the technology of peace.
Interesting.
Which is essentially the technology of international relations, foreign governments, and nations. Okay. And that's why in my explanatory statement, which I've lost track of where that went, here it is. That's why I say, my allegiance lies simply in the ideas that are found within that incorporated body that would match up with the definitions of nation and peace from the definitions section in section 2, right? My allegiance is not infinite and unconditional. My allegiance is confined to be within the definitions of nation and peace. And if the federal corporation decides at any point to step outside those definitions, then my allegiance would end at that point.
Right.
By definition, if the federal corporation ever steps outside the definition of nation or peace, then by its own codes, it ceases to exist. My allegiance ends at the moment that the nation ceases to exist, simply because my support cannot exist for a nation that does not physically exist.
Wow.
And then I go on from there, and there's more to it, but that's the gist of my temporary and qualified pledge of allegiance.
So many people have asked me what I do to stay mentally and physically resilient in the midst of the unending polarization, fear, and tyranny. Literally nothing has made a bigger impact for me than daily cold plunging. 3 minutes, 37 degrees every morning for over a year now. My friends, I wanted to tell you about the Edge Tub from Edge Theory Labs. Their portable and inflatable tub can alternate between an ice bath and hot tub. I've been regenerating the benefits of cold plunging every day, like better sleep, better focus, and more energy. We have had some really amazing interviews to learn more about cold exposure. But in the meantime, I invite you to check out Edge Theory Labs' website to learn more. I'm also happy to share an exclusive offer for Future Generations podcast listeners, $150 off using the code TheFutureGen. You can find more info in the show notes. Get cold. What's up, FG fam? One of the single best companies whose products have supported the optimal wellness of our family for years is Earthly Wellness. Kate TG and her team have stood for truth, health, and freedom in ways that paved the way for so many of us. They experienced heavy levels of censorship long before it was popularized, and they stood strong and persevered. Their products are clean, cost-effective, and honestly, they work for all ages. From supporting my wife, our oldest, and our little guy, Earthly Wellness provides products that have been foundational for our family for years. We especially use their products right before bedtime. Their Feel Better Fast and other herbal tinctures are some of the best in the world, as well as their amazing Goodnight Lotion, the magnesium oil, are mainstays. I am so excited to be partnering with Earthly to offer Future Generations podcast listeners 10% off your first purchase. You can find the code link in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of the show. Love and appreciate you all. Pragmatically, this being in San Diego and really kind of paying attention to what's happening at the border, I imagine that, there's so much that's politicized. There's so much that is like a facade. I'm sure a lot of it is, who knows what's actually real. However, you can essentially nationalize someone from anywhere by any means necessary. So do they actually have to even come to the country? You know,
The definition of an illegal alien is someone who has not conferred nationality of the state or of a state upon themselves after birth by any means whatsoever, or someone who has not had the nationality of that state conferred upon them by another. The border agent can confer nationality of the United States upon anyone walking over the border, and those particular individuals would then be naturalized into United States. Once they're naturalized, as long as they pledge allegiance, they would be, if you look at 22 USC 212, they would be eligible for a passport.
right.
Persons entitled to passport. No passport shall be granted or issued to or verified for any other persons than those owing allegiance, whether citizens or not, to the United States.
That's so crazy.
So if I walk over the border and I say, I hereby confer the nationality of the United States upon myself and my children and my friends after birth by any means whatsoever, here is a little handwritten, scribbled Pledge of Allegiance. I would be able to legally enter into the country and work and get a passport.
Wow. It's insane.
And that person would be considered what's called a non-citizen national, which we'll get into now. Gotcha. Okay. So I'll just show you that that's real for all the naysayers out there. I-9 form. We'll pull that bad boy up. This is the employment eligibility and verification. Box 1, a citizen of the United States. Box 2, a non-citizen national of the United States.
Wow. Check
box 2. If I were to fill one of these out, I'd fill out and check box 2, right? Very simple, right?
Insane.
So we're going to go back to this. This is where things get interesting, right? So we figured all these things out. Now we have national of the United States. And by the way, 22 CFR 51.2, I believe it is. Yeah, here we go. So a passport, who is a passport issued to? People think, oh, citizens. Even the passport office, only citizens can get a passport. Bullshit. So fucking false. A passport may be issued only to a U.S. national. If you look on the DS-11 passport application form, I don't know why people still believe this is all bullshit. It just makes me laugh. People literally, their mind and their world starts to crack at the seams, and out of some sort of weird psychotic defense mechanism, they freak out. It's so fucking funny to me. I declare under penalty of perjury all of the following. 1, I am a citizen or non-citizen national of the United States. Nobody reads shit. That's the issue here. It's not that fucking complicated. Okay? Now why does it say that? Because if you go to 8 USC 1101 subsection A22, we have here a national of the United States means A, a citizen of the United States, or B, a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, owes permanent allegiance to the United States. What do we see on 22 USC 212? No passport shall be granted or issued to or verified for any other persons than those owing allegiance, whether citizens or not, to the United States. The word citizen, by the way, I've spent probably 70 hours of my life trying to figure out what it means. Essentially, and I don't even know where to start showing this to you, because I could do a 20 hours of video just on the word citizen. Course. The word citizen means government employee. That's what the word citizen means.
Oh, it's insane.
So the term national of the United States means a government employee of the United States, which is a corporation. So a government employee of the corporation, or a person who, though not a government employee, owes permanent allegiance to the corporation called the United States, right? And you can see that, another thing that you can really look at to kind of notice that is 22 CFR 51.3 types of passports. There's a type of passport called an official passport. And it's for personal services contractors, non-personal services contractors. They're talking about government employees. They're talking about citizens, government employees. A citizen is a government employee, right?
Right.
So the thing is, a government employee doesn't have the Constitution. A government employee works in the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia is not part of the United States of America. Thus, the District of Columbia would not allow you to have access to something like a Second Amendment.
Wow.
Which is why you need a license to carry what they call firearm. The Second Amendment doesn't say a fucking thing about firearms. Second Amendment. Where in this quote do you see the word firearms? You tell me. I'll give you $100,000 cash if you can find the word firearms.
Just says arms.
I don't own firearms. I don't even know what the fuck firearm is. Fuck you. I don't know what you're talking about. You say you have a firearm. Well, you just gave away your own Second Amendment.
Interesting.
Second Amendment doesn't give you shit for firearms.
Interesting.
ATF. What does the F stand for? The government agency, ATF. What does the F stand for?
I don't know.
Firearms.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Great. ATF can call me all they want. I don't know why you're calling me. I don't carry firearms. I don't have firearms. I don't build firearms. I don't paint firearms. I don't fix firearms. I don't even want to talk about them. I have arms. I build arms. I paint arms. I fix arms.
Interesting.
I carry all the arms I want. I'll carry arms all day long, all night long.
Interesting.
You go to a court of law and they say, what kind of firearms? And you say, oh, this one and this one. You're fucked.
Yep.
You don't have a Second Amendment.
Yep.
Firearms are carried by government employees called U.S. citizens. Arms are carried by actual Americans.
Wow.
It's very simple. So going back to this term here, let's read it again. The term national of the United States means A, a citizen of the United States, or B, a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, owes permanent allegiance to the United States, right? So we have these terms. We have this term in 22 CFR 51.2. We have the term U.S. national. Same thing. That word is the same word as national of the United States.
Right.
So if someone says, are you a U.S. national? They're asking you, are you A or B?
Right.
If someone says, are you a national of the United States? They're saying, are you A or B? But if we go back to the I-9 form, how does it say it here? A non-citizen national of the United States. A non-citizen national of the United States is only and exclusively referring to subsection B. So you say, I'm a national. Okay, a national of what? Korea? No, of the United States. Okay, so that could still mean you're a citizen. The exact and specific terminology that you use is from the I-9 form. A non-citizen national of the United States. A non-government employee who has pledged allegiance but does not necessarily live inside of and is eligible for a passport.
Yep.
The United States. Very simple.
Yeah.
So now with that said, this is the part where we start getting into taxation, which just takes a moment because after understanding all that, taxation is really simple. Okay. So we get into 26 CFR, which stands for Code of Federal Regulations, section 1.871-1. Right. For purposes of the income tax, alien individuals. Now notice they always use the word alien.
Mm-hmm.
What does alien mean? It means foreigner. We start getting into why that is. And the reason why is because the United States is located in the District of Columbia, and inside the District of Columbia is all just workers. They don't live there. They just work there. So everyone's an alien. That's why they say resident alien.
Gotcha.
You'll see that term all the time. Resident alien. It's an oxymoron. Resident alien.
Mm-hmm.
Resident foreigner, right? So for purposes of the income tax, alien individuals, and if we click on the word individuals, that doesn't go anywhere because they don't want to tell you the definition of that one. That would just destroy all their game. For purpose of the income tax, alien individuals are divided generally into two classes, namely resident aliens and non-resident aliens, right? Resident means, so you have the domicile, which is like your real honest to God home. And then your residence is a temporary place that you are staying at. You intend to return to your domicile, and you're there typically for some kind of recreational or business related activity. That's what the word resident means. So resident alien means a foreigner who does not really live here, who's temporarily visiting us for recreational or business related purposes. Okay. So for purposes of the income tax, alien individuals, foreign individuals, are divided generally into two classes, namely a person who's temporarily visiting us, who's completely foreign to us and does not actually domicile here, and somebody who is foreign to us who's not here, a non-resident alien. That's what the terms mean, right? Resident alien individuals are, in general, taxable the same as employees of the government. That is, a temporary visitor who is a foreigner is taxable on income, which is also a hilarious subject. We're not going to get into that. Derived from all sources, including sources that are outside of the District of Columbia, right? Now, this is where people get mad. This is what you did. This is what everyone has done in this whole country. However, non-resident alien individuals may elect to be treated as U.S. residents for the purposes of determining their income tax liability.
Wow.
So what happened is that you were a non-resident alien. You didn't live in the District of Columbia. You never naturalized into the District of Columbia. Hell, we don't even know where the goddamn thing is located. It's in the District of Columbia. We don't even know where the fuck it is. How do you get there? You can only get there by saying you're there. There's no other way to get there. I can drive all through the District of Columbia all day long. I can walk every square foot of the 10 square mile radius of the District of Columbia. How in the fuck do I know I was ever in the United States? The only way you can get there is through naturalization, the conferring of the state called United States upon a person, which could be an individual or an organization, after birth by any means whatsoever. So when did you move into the United States? You moved into the United States the first time you ever filled out one of these, a W-9 form.
Interesting.
How did you naturalize? Certification. Under penalty of perjury, I certify that. Point number 3, I am a U.S. citizen or other U.S. person. Right here next to your signature of U.S. person. I'm not a U.S. person or a U.S. citizen. But when you tell them you are, congratulations. You just elected to be treated as a U.S. resident for purposes of determining your income tax liability.
So gnarly.
You elected. It's called an election. So in Title 8, it's called naturalization. In Title 26, it's called the election. You volunteered to be treated as though you live inside of this God knows where location that is a corporation located in the District of Columbia.
And you think you're just getting a job. So what form do you fill out? We're not going to get into that form, but what form do you fill out? You fill out what's called a W-8-BEN. And you're going to set the whole goddamn business on fire when you give them one of these. They've never seen this before. Yep.
This is what you're going to give them that actually clarifies everything. And this is how you will become completely federal and state tax exempt. State of California is also a business located in the District of Columbia.
I did not know that.
So when you sign up for voter registration,
I did not know that.
So let's say California voter registration. Show me on here where a non-citizen national of the United States would be located.
It could be.
The answer is it's not there.
Yeah.
They all say a U.S. citizen, 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 a U.S. citizen.
Wow.
This is naturalization. You are naturalizing into the District of Columbia when you register for vote.
Wow.
That's why they push it so hard. That's why everywhere you look and everywhere you go, vote now. Voting's so important, and they create all this political pressure because they want you to naturalize into the District of Columbia. They want you to confer the nationality of the state called the United States upon yourself after birth by any means whatsoever. If you do that, now you're in the tax code.
Wow. Wow.
You have to volunteer in. If you don't volunteer in, they can't touch you. Voter registration is it's a naturalization document. Voter registration is a naturalization document. Another major naturalization document is the driver's license.
Wow.
To get a driver's license, you have to state under penalty of perjury that you are a resident of state of California, which is a business located in the District of Columbia. Driver's license and voter registration are the two key areas of naturalization.
Wow.
If you destroy or clarify or fix them both, you're not in state of California anymore. I'm not in state of California. I don't have voter registration. I don't have a driver's license. I'm not a resident of the business called state of California. Never have been. I thought I was a long time ago. I was confused. I'm not. And for people who would like more background information on this, the 14th Amendment is what split up the whole country into this whole federal U.S. citizen versus state citizen. And if you want to go even deeper on that, you're going to look up what's called the slaughterhouse cases, which is a series of Supreme Court cases that occurred right after the 14th Amendment, and literally right on Google, on Wikipedia front page. The Slaughterhouse Cases was a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision which ruled that the Privileges or Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution only protects the legal rights that are associated with federal U.S. citizenship, not those that pertain to state citizenship.
Wow.
Two entirely different classifications.
Wow. Federal
U.S. citizenship and state citizenship are two completely different things. So you have two entire different conversations that need to take place. The first conversation is nationality versus citizenship. The second conversation is federal U.S. citizenship versus state citizenship.
Yep.
And if you notice, the word state is not capitalized because it's not talking about the corporation called State of California, which is capitalized. The original California before 1871, which still exists to this day as a nation, was never incorporated.
Wow.
There was a second version of State of California, which is an incorporated state. The original Constitution from California before it was incorporated comes from 1849. I couldn't even find the goddamn thing on the internet anywhere. I had to go down to the local law library and dig through old books. The lady, the librarian who had been working there, had never had anyone ask for the original 1849 Constitution. And I went and I got it and I scanned it and I posted it on my website. And this is not something you're going to find anywhere. This is the original, non-incorporated Constitution of California. Wow. You go online, you type in, when was the Constitution of California written? I guarantee you it's going to say 1879. Boom. Oh, wow. It actually come up. Look at that. I can't believe that.
Wow.
But the answer is the incorporated version of California, 1879 Constitution. This is the Constitution for the incorporated version.
Interesting.
That's why it's called Statutes of California. So this one has nothing to do with me. I'm not naturalized into the incorporated version. This is the one that would apply to me. The unincorporated version.
We'll make sure that we make that distinction in the show notes.
So every single state, how many? So let me ask you a question: how many states are there in the incorporated version of the United States, or how many? No, how many states are there if you were to combine the unincorporated United States and the United States? The answer is 101 states. There are two versions of each state, and then the 101 is the District of Columbia.
Yeah, that's what I was going to guess.
But the District of Columbia is not a part of the original United States of America. It's only a part of the incorporated version of the new incorporated United States.
Gotcha.
There's two different countries.
A lot of our families are going through this whole process, and I think there's a lot of options, and there's a lot of people that some people trust, and then you hear hear about, reputations, you hear about high ticket values, you hear about all sorts of things that, may not necessarily be true. And it may be like a lot of snake oil salesmen out there in the freedom movement. Right. But something that I'm really interested in is when we have babies that are born through our practice, some parents are like, should I do the birth certificate? Should I do all that stuff? Social security number? Should they be a citizen of the United States? And what would you say? What would you advise them to do?
So the birth certificate is a naturalization document of you as the mother naturalizing the child into the incorporated version of the state.
All right.
So there's no reason to do that. If I go back onto share screen, you can write a little affidavit and you can go and file it down at the county recorder, and it could be a birth certificate, and you can make it yourself. Or when you go to get your child a passport, which you can get we've got teeny little babies that we're getting passports for. It's really cute, and they put these teeny tiny little baby pictures on the passports.
Yep.
You can actually use what's called a birth affidavit. Wow. It's called the DS-10.
Wow.
And if you look at really old versions of the passport, which I have literally last week, I found this huge treasure trove of really old passport docs. So cool. If you go on my state national resources page, you can scroll down and you can see these really, really cool. And if you look at these and you actually read them, that's all it was. It was just a little affidavit of like someone who knew the person. Yep. And all they do is they just say, this person was born. I know this person. They sign. That's it.
Awesome.
So the DS-10 is essentially the version of what we used to see 100 years ago on the passports. And you don't need shit. You just fill out a birth affidavit form. What's going to happen is when you fill out the DS-10, if you attach to the DS-11, the passport application form, where it says social security number, you're going to leave that blank, and then what they're going to do is they're going to say that. So if the person at the passport office is not going to know anything about this, so what you're going to do is you're going to tell them that there's a form they have to give you that makes you sign under penalty of perjury, stating that you've never gotten that particular child a social security number. If you don't sign that, when you submit the passport, it's going to get kicked back. They won't deny it, but they're going to kick it back, and they're going to give you 90 days to come back in, sign that document, and then after that, they will issue your child a passport. You do not need a birth certificate. You do not need a social security number to get a passport. A passport, you don't need a driver's license. You can just use your passport to operate a vehicle. Wow. That comes from 18 USC 1545. Whoever violates any safe conduct or passport duly obtained and issued under authority of the United States shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 10 years. Wow. So if a police officer stops you with a passport and violates your safe conduct, he can go to prison for up to 10 years.
Wow. Insane.
So, and then if you look at the I-9 again, and we go to the instructions on the I-9, let's say, for example, you say, well, how will my kid ever work? That's also covered under the I-9, because if you go to the second page, it says here, list of acceptable documents that have to be issued.
Yep.
You have to prove two things. You have to prove identity and employment authorization.
Wow.
List
Cool.
A are documents that cover both. List B only covers identity. List C only covers employment authorization. Look at point number 1 of list A.
Yep. Yep.
All you need to work and
Beautiful.
all you need to get a passport is pledge allegiance. You don't need dick. If you look over here, the social security number is over here in list C.
Yep.
Because the social security number has nothing to do with you. It has to do with that all caps name associated with the birth certificate.
Insane.
Yeah.
Brandon, I could go for hours. We got to have you come back. I don't know when that will be, but I know you're a busy guy. I would love to have you come back and kind of go deep dive into that, first chapter we were going down, rounded third base. But I think people are still at home. I think people are not even, they're not even on base yet. But at the same time, I think you covered a lot of the things that a lot of our community has been navigating in ways that is so not only just right in front of your face, definitions from the actual documents that have the clearest definitions that you have to obviously clarify on your end, but even pragmatically looking at what we have, what we're witnessing in San Diego with the numbers of people actually crossing the border, and just understanding that, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe about it, we've covered on this podcast, like the back end, right? Like as soon as somebody is operating in commerce and operating within the system, like they are generating all sorts of revenue for the corporation. And we know that the corporation makes a ton of money the more open the borders are, just because the people are coming through. We also know there's probably likely an invasion too.
Well, that gets goofier and goofier, because as you start to understand negotiable instruments, you can literally create trillions and trillions. I can create $177 trillion in the next 6 minutes.
That's crazy.
So the thing is that even all of that, even all of this so-called revenue production, it's completely unnecessary. It's all an illusion. You don't need to do any of that to produce. All you need to know is you need to study negotiable instruments, endorsements, negotiability, transferability, redeemability, and basic banking. And you can literally, with a pen, $480 trillion in 5 minutes can be produced.
And your children don't need anything, because I've heard that you let your children be the citizen, you absolve, or you revest title, you do the HTC SBC thing for your kids when they're 18. And
that's a whole nother, I'm not in that boat. SPC, a secured party creditor is, if you look on a UCC1 financing statement, a secured party creditor is just the creditor when there's been a previous security interest from a creditor and a debtor, and then you file the UCC1 financing statement to perfect the security interest. Yeah. It's very simple. This SPC thing is so complicated. Right. It's not that complicated. Whoever is the creditor in any interaction is the secured party creditor. You aren't really the secured party creditor until you file a UCC1. So you can file, as long as you understand how all that works and you understand who's the creditor and who's the debtor and what is the structure of a security interest, and you know how collateral works. If you file a UCC1, you become the SPC. It's the easiest thing in the world. You know how hard it is to become an SPC? I mean, as long as you do it correctly. If you do it wrong, it's illegal. You can get in a lot of trouble. But if you do it right, $5 and 5 minutes. Wow. That's how long it takes to file a UCC1. Wow. $5
insane.
In 5 minutes.
Children who don't go down the whole trail of social security numbers, birth certificates can operate in the field that you're talking about.
I would open up a Title VIII organization and get an EIN number, open up bank accounts, and then I would trademark your children's names. And then I would place that trademark inside of a Title VIII organization. And if anyone at any point in time manufactures any performance bonds or payment bonds or unconditional promises to pay or unconditional orders to pay at all, and they place that child's name on those documents, I would sue for a federal trademark violation.
Got it. I love
Children are property in the law. And if you hold the trademark, you own that property.
I love that. Okay. I love that. Brandon, this was awesome. I think on every aspect, like getting into the weeds of getting clear definitions to actually being very pragmatic with a lot of our families that are, we're teaching them like just continue to grow vibrant, healthy families, but they better understand freedom and they better understand it in a way that helps their children navigate from this generation into our future generations. And I think you provided more information in about an hour and a half than I would say, 200 episodes so far. And I really, really appreciate it. So
yeah, I've been trying to bring it down and compress it and clarify it. It's every day. That's all I do is just try to figure out how I can do that. So
man. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that, a lot of the, people in your world kind of pointed you to our direction, and a lot of my good friends pointed me in your direction, because I promise you, like, I would love to have you back and kind of talk through a lot of those other things, because I think the end game is, essentially we have future generations that are more free than we've ever been. And that's not just administratively, financially, health-wise. It's this whole kind of, we just know there's this divine thing that's going on too. So genuinely appreciate you for that, man. There's
a lot happening. Yeah, it's exciting. And I think, one of the big things I stand for, and one of the big things that I really matter to me, is that, a lot of people get pretty angry with this stuff. And again, my whole platform and everything I do is at peace, so that's what
I love it.
I truly believe. And I've truly experienced that. You think that people know any of this information? I'll tell you right now, they wouldn't be there working $15 an hour if they knew any of this information.
I love it.
You wouldn't have anyone in the payment processing center. You wouldn't have anyone at the IRS. You wouldn't have, there'd be nobody there. There'd be no cubicles. It'd be an empty building.
Yep.
They're there because they don't know. And once you realize that, you're not going to be so angry. You're angry because you think they know. These people don't. It's the dumbest fucking thing ever. You think these people know? That's the most ridiculous assumption you could ever make. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Wow. You've never met or talked to or even had access to anyone who knew 1% of what I just shared with you guys.
Wow.
And not to be egotistical, I mean, thousands of hours, total obsession, and every dollar, everything I do trying to figure this out for years on end has produced what I understand. This is not just read a book or a news article. You're not going to find any of this information.
How do people find you?
onestupidfuck.com, bro.
I had to get you to say it. That's awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man. I can't wait to see how this episode echoes through our universe. It's going to be awesome. And I know our people are going to be way more free than they've ever realized. Appreciate you
guys. Thank you.
As you probably know, I'm the clinic director of the Future Generations Clinic of Chiropractic. I wanted to invite those of you in the greater San Diego area to come check us out. We expect and experience miracles in our office every day, and would love for you to experience the same, as well as your family, especially your kids. This month, we're offering our new patient package for just $67 for podcast listeners. The offer retails at $349 and includes an in-depth consultation where our patients literally tell us we know more about their family's health in the first 15 minutes than virtually every doctor on their healthcare team combined. Our state-of-the-art clinical workup, including Insight nervous system scans, full spine digital x-rays, and a functional exam. We also include a full report of your results, a customized plan to realize your greatest health potential, as well as your first adjustment in our office. Check out the link in the show notes for all the details and claim the offer. Love and appreciate you all.